What's up, dudes? So have you ever heard of Sega's cult classic game, Comix Zone? If not, you're in for a treat because it is the best retro game you've probably never played. It wasn't until I heard of Sega's recent announcement of it getting a film adaptation that made me think about this game in the first place. After reading the news, I didn't know how to feel because I've only played it a handful of times as a kid and never got past the first level, which seems to be a recurring theme when it comes to these Genesis games. I do, however, remember finding the concept of playing your way through a comic book fascinating. Now, curiosity was getting the better of me, so I booted Comix Zone up, played it, and I can safely tell you that this game is pretty fantastic. Now, before we dive into why this game is fantastic, here's a quick primer for you. Sketch Turner is a starving artist who is somehow making a living in uber expensive New York City. During a thunderstorm, Sketch was working on his latest comic, titled Comix Zone. What a surprise! A lightning bolt strikes his comic, and the main villain from the comic, Mortis, a mutant with a bad attitude, escapes from it. So Mortis has a grand desire to take over the world for some reason, but he can't until he becomes a real boy, which means Sketch has to die. That is why he sends Sketch and his pet rat Roadkill into Comix Zone to kill him. Now you play as Sketch, and the goal is to find a way out of the comic and not to die. The beauty of this game is that you literally navigate through the entire comic, panel by panel, fighting monsters and solving puzzles until you beat the game. There are assists, like your rat friend, who helps you find items and complete puzzles. You'll find iced tea, which replenishes your health when you drink it. There are knives and bombs that also help you clear obstacles, but beware of the latter because you can definitely get hit from the crossfire. There is also an occasional fist you'll pick up, which, when used, will transform you into a superhero, like One Punch Man, who will clear the field with a single punch. Now, some of these items you'll find out in the open, but many more are hidden throughout, and they make your life so much easier, so be mindful of this. Oh, and I almost forgot, enemies do hit each other, so feel free to use that to your advantage. Comix Zone's concept of playing inside a comic book is technically not the first of its kind, as that honor belongs to an older Batman game, but they expanded upon it significantly, to the point where Sega earned a patent for the simulated comic book game, which is just another reason why Sega was so god tier. Now I highly recommend you check out my other video on why Sega must make a new home console now, because in my letter to Sega, I explained to them how much of a pioneer they were to the gaming industry. Many things that we use in gaming today, like DLCs and even online gaming, they in fact innovated. Overall, Comix Zone is not a particularly long game. In fact, if you're a natural talent, then you'll probably beat it in under an hour. But if you're like me, it'll take you much longer. My playthroughs were anything from elegant, but I really enjoyed it. Especially the music. The rock-heavy tunes are fantastic and give off such a chill vibe as you're mowing down monsters. And you can thank composer Howard Drossen, who is best known for his longtime collaboration with Wu-Tang frontman RZA and his noteworthy soundtracks from several movies and video games. Now I'll definitely admit, Sketch's fighting style looks pretty slick when it comes to fighting monsters, but it's no Street Fighter Turbo. The movements are a tad slower and more technical, and it can feel pretty awkward when playing on a Pro Switch controller. In fact, this game is creeping on 30 years old, and the Genesis 6 button controller is the ideal controller to play with. If you're one of the lucky few to have that and the original game, I'd love to know how that went. For a 16-bit game, the graphics are quite good, very bright and appealing. Comix Zone has two different endings, and which one you earn depends on how you complete it, which don't worry, I won't spoil it for you. Comix Zone is a challenging game that will probably be a rough ride for most at first, but you'll get the hang of it. What makes it so fantastic is the journey, albeit a pretty short one, but you'll appreciate the cool music, the unique gameplay, and at the very least, Sketch's hilarious catchphrases throughout. It's truly one of a different breed. Before we end, I did want to share my thoughts on the future movie adaptation that I mentioned earlier. Look, There is enough story to adapt, and the premise is unique enough to appeal to a lot of people, but I really think it will come down to execution. I could see someone like an Edgar Wright, who did a superb job on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, even though no one saw it, would be a great choice to direct. I do believe the right cast will also play a huge role. Do I expect Comix Zone to succeed? The history of video game movie adaptations tells me probably not. But there is a chance, just because the plot is so different that I feel it could appeal to a wide audience. Dudes, I love creating videos and will continue to create more, but I would love your feedback. If there is a particular anime or video game you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know in the comments. You can follow me on Twitter or Facebook, or even send me an email at hassyverse@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep track of my latest videos, as I have some cool stuff brewing. Thanks for watching, and stay nerdious.